Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. It's just gone 9 after 8 o'clock Central African time. We cross over to Jerusalem and we'll be talking with Ofer Neiman. He is an Israeli anti-apartheid activist. And let's kind of see what's the mood like on the ground in Jerusalem. And I guess also as far as the Jewish people are concerned. A very good morning to you. Thank you indeed for your time. I look forward to this discussion.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Lovely to have you on the show. So you are in Jerusalem. I should imagine possibly I don't, I've never been to that part of the world, so I'm not quite sure about the distances between the different cities and areas. How far removed are you from the West Bank and Gaza?
So the West Bank is really, I mean, East Jerusalem too. So just a few
Ah,
minutes. I'm almost there. Gaza, a bit more than an hour away. It's a very small place.
so you people based in Jerusalem, obviously, and the West Bank and the rest of Israel, Palestine, however you're going to refer to it as. Obviously, with all of this ongoing bombardment, you guys are you're hearing and seeing all of this going down as well. I'm kind of wondering, how does it affect you, being an anti-apartheid activist, and other Jewish people who are, who say that not in my name or not in our name? It must have a huge impact on all of you as well.
Yeah, this is terrible. I can hear the planes, the Israeli Air Force planes, flying right now, and they're either on their way to bomb Gaza or on their way back. And what's going on in Gaza right now is a genocide. I mean, human rights groups are saying that, activists around the world. If it's not a genocide according to legal standards, it's a crime against humanity, and it certainly doesn't solve anything. But I'm still privileged. I'm not getting bombed here. It's people in Gaza who are the real victims.
The organizations, you being an anti-apartheid activist, and organizations that, Jewish organizations who are saying not in our name or not in my name, and we're seeing mass protest action, marches all around the world. Do you believe that that is going to have an impact at all regarding this ongoing bombardment?
Um, I really hope that this ongoing political mobilization around the world is going to force various politicians in the UK, in the US, eventually the Israeli government too, um, uh, to support, to accept a ceasefire. Um, it's very, very difficult, but I also think that in the long run, what we're seeing right now is the global Palestine solidarity movement becoming much stronger, especially in the US. And I think this will have an impact on the situation here. And I think that the younger generation in the United States will force a change in US foreign policy in terms of ending support for Israeli apartheid policies.
Uh, we do know that America is, and the UK obviously, are in total and full support of what is going on in that part of the world, in your part of the world. They are supplying sophisticated armaments, arms, etc., to the Israeli government. Sorry. We also know that they have their aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean Sea ready to um, to attack if called upon. How do you view all of that, and how do other like-minded people like yourself see this? And do you believe that you have a voice at all as far as Netanyahu and his government is concerned, his coalition government?
So, I mean, people like me, Israeli citizens who are against the whole apartheid system that we have here, That's another term that we should use. I mean, now, I mean, for several years now, various human rights groups, including Israel's leading human rights group B'Tselem, has been calling this an apartheid system. So we're a minority here. It's interesting that people don't like to hear our voice, perhaps because they understand that there's something quite true about the anti-apartheid message. Within Israel, we're a minority. You asked about U.S. presence here. So Israel is already the regional superpower, and the Palestinians have nothing, especially in Gaza. They're just 2.3 million people living in an open air prison. And now you also see the world's strongest power, the United States, also bringing its aircraft carriers and joining Israel against Gaza to show you how unfair, unjust all of this is. So, I mean, I should say, I mean, there was a massacre here of Israeli citizens on October 7th. But responding with a genocide, I mean, first of all, I mean, it's illegal, but it doesn't, and it's terrible, and it doesn't solve anything. And the United States should be responsible, should be calling for a ceasefire, should be stopping this, because otherwise, Netanyahu and other Israeli politicians, they have no end game. I mean, if there is an end game, they want to drive the Palestinians out of Gaza and into Sinai. And of course, this is another war crime, ethnic cleansing, and we should all stop that. And the U.S. should be pushing for a ceasefire. Netanyahu has no other real solution in mind except for trying to do this and bringing about more violence here.
Ofer, we need to go for an ad break. Please stand by. Let's take that break and come back. There's so much more that I want to unpack with you this morning.
To the comfort of my childhood than the smell of black seed oil being applied by my nanny. Now I'm using Tib black seed in my own home to soothe sniffles and coughs, to help with digestion and immunity, and of course, as part of my beauty routine. After all these years, I've come to appreciate the wisdom in finding comfort and shifa in trusted treatments like Tib black seed. You can find Tib black seed at all leading pharmacies or find out more at blackseed.co.za.
Sponsor an orphan, and you'll help support a vulnerable child to have the education they've always dreamed of, so they can build a brighter future. You'll be feeding a hungry stomach and a hungry mind with knowledge that will last them a lifetime. That's the power of an education. Sponsor an orphan now with Islamic Relief.
Conveniently located along the banks of the Crocodile River bordering the Kruger National Park, as a guest at Buckler's Africa Lodge, one can enjoy an amazing sunrise or sunset on our spacious deck area while you catch a glimpse of some wildlife sightings along the Crocodile River. The sounds of the African savanna will greet you whilst you enjoy your morning coffee. Buckler's Africa Lodge by Tingana Collection. Buckler's Africa Lodge is ideally situated only 6 kilometers from the Crocodile Bridge Gate in the Kruger National Park. Catering for all travelers with variety, we have 4 types of the finest rooms: superior rooms, deluxe suites, and 2-bedroomed family units. Each room is equipped with the finest amenities to make your stay unforgettable. Guests can choose between the self-catering option or book their accommodation with breakfast and dinner included. Buckler's Africa Lodge is your ideal location for the ultimate Kruger getaway experience. We specialize in exhilarating and educational game drives in Kruger, tailor-made to suit your family. Inquire about our various accommodation offerings and other activities. Visit www.tingana.co.za for more information. Buckler's Africa Lodge by Tingana Collection. Experience the pulse of Africa with us.
Ah, the kitchen, the heart of the home, where memories are made and celebrated. Our go-to place for those freshly stacked pancakes early in the morning or for that late-night snack munchies. We are in there together, cooking, eating, and celebrating life together. Let's keep the kitchen a place that is shared by everyone, where we build stronger bonds and grow together. Sunfoil, now we cooking. Visit nowwecooking.co.za for recipes that everyone can help make.
Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. It is exactly 8:20 a.m. news and views on Salam Media, and of course 8:20 a.m. East South African time. I'm talking with an anti-apartheid activist. He is Ofer Neiman. He is, of course, Israeli. He's based in Jerusalem, and he is talking with us this morning regarding the situation in Gaza. Ofer, welcome back. Having this interview with me, does it not pose some sort of risk or threat to you?
That's an interesting question. I mean, obviously, we do get threats on social media from Israeli individuals. Some of us are getting blacklisted, losing jobs. It really depends on your personal circumstances. We still have a certain amount of privilege here as Jewish Israeli citizens who can speak out. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but perhaps the analogy would be, white people, white dissidents in apartheid South Africa. As far as I can understand, they had some freedom to speak out against apartheid without being arrested, even though they often faced some harassment. So I guess that could be an analogy, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
You're quite right. Okay, so let's look at the current situation then. We're also hearing that settlers are being armed, possibly by the IDF, all of the arms coming in sent in by the United States. They are giving arms to settlers to supposedly protect themselves. But we've seen video footage and we've read reports of how the settlers are now attacking unarmed Palestinian civilians and killing them and innocent children and women as well. That is not acceptable. Is there a voice? Do you and people like yourself have a voice to prevent the settlers from, getting caught up in this carnage?
So there is a somewhat larger camp within Jewish Israeli society that is against such settler violence, because the settlers and the religious right wing here have a broader agenda of taking over the entire system and turning Israel into a different state, a different version of apartheid, perhaps one that would be less liberal towards Jews as well. And liberal Israeli Zionists who are still supportive of the overall apartheid system that we have here would like to maintain their privileges and their more liberal way of life. So there is a stronger coalition here when it comes to extremist settlers, but right now, hardly anyone is speaking about this. Everyone focuses on Gaza, and unfortunately, the overwhelming majority of the Jewish Israeli public here supports the ongoing extermination of human beings in Gaza. And what the settlers are doing in the West Bank is not so much in the news.
Okay. I guess you could say, in a sense, you are a settler as well, or your forefathers are settlers too. Having said that, I'm trying to get a sense of the situation as it plays out. I want to read something to you, and I'd like you to respond to that. But just before I do that, the whole world keeps referring to the start of this genocide or ethnic cleansing that we're seeing now, blames it directly and squarely at the feet of Hamas, suggesting that they started this on the 7th of October. But if we are true to the situation, and if we can be totally honest and look deep within ourselves and into history, we do know that this goes right back to the year 1947. And it's really about years and years and years of subjugation, of oppression, of being treated as second class citizens, if that. And we do know that that is precisely what happened here in South Africa. Years and years and years of the apartheid system, and eventually the people rose and and we now see a free South Africa. But we are, of course, beset with our other problems as well. But that's part and parcel of any political system. So I just wanted to point that out to you, and I'm sure you would be in agreement with me. You can't be suppressing people or a nation of people, stealing their lands, dispelling them from their homeland, and then still expect them to be passive and not resist at all. That is my take on the situation. Let's look at this statement here. The United States is saying that they don't support reoccupation of Gaza. I'd like you to explain to me what you understand by that. And then it goes on to say Netanyahu's comments suggesting Israel would take responsibility for security in Gaza after the war, whenever that is. And I'd also like you to tell me when you think that that date might be or when that time might be. And then State Department spokesperson in the US, Vedant Patel, said, and I quote, generally speaking, Washington does not support a reoccupation of Gaza, and neither does Israel. What do you make of all of that? What are they saying in that statement?
I think they are confused. I think that the United States, the Biden administration, and Biden himself are increasingly alarmed, seeing that Netanyahu and the Israeli government doesn't really have an end game in Gaza, perhaps except for this horrific possibility of trying to expel the Palestinians from Gaza into Sinai. And the Americans are alarmed. I don't think Israel has a plan. And if the idea is to go and reoccupy Gaza and control it, of course, it's not going to work. There's going to be terrible violence. And regarding other options that are on the table, one of them is for the Palestinian Authority, President Abu Mazen, to take over the Gaza Strip, but I don't think he's very keen on doing that. Coming there to a place that is completely destroyed by Israel and trying to reorganize things there according to Israel's commands. So Israel is stuck here. We need to stop the bombing. We need to prevent Israel from carrying out an ethnic cleansing project. Beyond that, Israel is going to be stuck. I don't know what they're trying to do. And the interesting question here is to see the Americans responding to that once they realize more deeply that Israel doesn't really have a serious plan. And that's why we need all this international pressure, especially on the Biden administration, to call for a ceasefire, because otherwise, we're just going to see more and more senseless violence.
You spoke about the Palestinian Authority. How much of credibility do they have? And do you think that will be a viable option? Let's assume, please God, that the war ends tomorrow. Is that a viable option for the PA to go into Gaza and start governing the people there after all of this carnage?
So first of all, I want to be careful here because I'm a privileged Israeli citizen, and when I have to comment on internal Palestinian affairs, I want to be careful and acknowledge my privilege. As far as I understand, the Palestinian Authority is extremely unpopular it's perceived, at least by most Palestinians, as an entity that collaborates with Israel and the US in enforcing occupation and apartheid in the West Bank. And as I said, for the Palestinian Authority to go into Gaza after this massacre and control Gaza according to Israeli wishes, they would surely not be popular in Gaza. And beyond that, just in terms of logistics and taking care of basic systems within Gaza after this destruction and massacre, I don't think that the Palestinian Authority would really want to do that. Perhaps they would want to do that if they get promises as to a more comprehensive solution after this whole thing ends. But it's hard to see how this serves their interests. Just going into Gaza and ruling it according to what the Israel and the United States are telling them to do. I think they're not really fond of this idea.
And this based obviously on the premise that Hamas had won their previous elections. So, and they do view the PA as the puppets of Israel and the US, sadly so. Let's look at the scenario. There's so many more questions that I do need to put to you, and I do truly appreciate your view as an activist living a privileged life in Jerusalem. I truly do appreciate that, because it's always nice to kind of get a sense of what's the thinking like of normal thinking people like you and I, so to speak. So I do appreciate all of your thoughts. Thank you indeed. Netanyahu and some of his ministers, I can't remember the one minister's name, warned that they may just go the nuclear route to wipe out Gaza. How I'm just trying to think of the horrors of something like that. Was that sensible for them to have made such a statement? What are they saying to the rest of the world, and especially for the Arab neighbors of Israel and Palestine? I think my view is that was a very reckless statement. But how do you see that playing out? Because if they go the nuclear route, they're not only going to wipe out Gaza, are they? The rest of Israel, Palestine is going to suffer serious repercussions as well.
That was an utterly crazy statement. It did not come from Netanyahu. Netanyahu is not saying that he's going to use a nuclear bomb. He's not that stupid. It did come from one minister, Amichai Eliyahu, from the fascist religious right wing here. And yeah, of course, you're right. This is a small place. First of all, I mean, the horror of using a nuclear bomb and doing so as an occupier, as a colonizer, as an apartheid state against an open air prison. But on top of that, yeah, this is a tiny place, and it just doesn't make any sense for Israel to do so when you have Israeli communities just minutes away from Gaza City. And it's also interesting that this minister Amichai Eliyahu, is still in office. I mean, you would imagine him being fired for such a crazy statement, but no, he is still a part of the regime. This tells you something about the mindset of the current Israeli leadership, and this is something that the world should be taking note of. These are the people who are leading Israel. So once again, many of them are messianic. Almost all of them support the ongoing genocide in Gaza, and they have no plan. I mean, if you ask them what their plan is and they say something crazy about a nuclear bomb, then you know that we absolutely need a ceasefire here.
Your sense of how soon this war will come to an end, and we do know it's really highly dependent on the US, what they would say and command Netanyahu to do.
Well, it's very difficult to predict for now. So I would say this stage will probably not last months. but it could last weeks. And I think that a lot depends on the pressure we exert as a global community of activists all over the world. Of course, in the U.S., and there's now a new generation of young Jewish American activists as well, and Palestinian activists, of course, in the U.S. who are exerting a lot of pressure. I understand that South Africa is now freezing or perhaps severing ties with the apartheid regime here, which is constructive. So a lot depends on us. We should do whatever we can to force a ceasefire here and
Okay.
stop the genocide.
Please, God, yes. One of the other ministers had also suggested, and I'm not sure if you've come across that statement, is to send all the Palestinians to Ireland, because Ireland obviously are very vociferous in their support to the Palestinians. Again, a very careless and not well thought through comment by that particular minister. Is it again just, gaslighting and just speaking out of turn for the sake of speaking, just drumming up more support from the ultra Zionist community within Israel?
Unfortunately not. I mean, so this relates to the plan to expel the Palestinians from Gaza first into Sinai. So I should have said first. The idea is to kick Palestinians out of Gaza and then resettle them. I mean, Israel doesn't really care. I mean, they don't mind if they are resettled inside Egypt. But another idea is to spread them out across various countries across the world. So Ireland would be one example. So this is an Israeli government long-term strategy. Their preferable solution, so-called solution for Gaza, is to have no Palestinians in Gaza, and then of course they may even resettle, rebuild the former Israeli settlements that were dismantled, rebuild them in Gaza.
Okay, two more questions before I let you go. And I really want to say it once again, I do appreciate your thoughts on this discussion. A lot of people are talking, even the South African government has uttered that perhaps the way forward at the end of this war, and once again I say, please God, let it be soon, is a two-state solution. But a while ago, I spoke to a Palestinian activist about 3-4 months ago, and this was pre the October 7 and the war that's playing out now. I asked her, what does she believe would be the plan going forward as far as the Palestinian people and their rights and the reclaiming of their land is concerned. And she says, we're only prepared to talk if we go back to the pre-1967 war and to those borders. Only then will we sit down and talk. There is no plan going forward as far as the Palestinians are concerned for a two-state solution. How do you see all of this?
So personally, I support and I'm also active for a one-state solution in Israel-Palestine, a one-state democratic solution, something similar to the South African model, perhaps one person, one vote, or similar options. So in essence, I do agree with that Palestinian activist. There's also a question of how we're going to get there. Perhaps people could unite around temporary solutions, such as a Palestinian state in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip, with some sort of connection between the two. Again, I'm a privileged Israeli citizen. I don't want to dictate various solutions to the Palestinians. And once again, I see this entire territory as a place where currently we have an Israeli apartheid system. I support a one-state solution. So the question is how we're going to get there. I think that there are quite a few Palestinians who also support a two-state solution, and this is something that perhaps the international community can get behind. But we're not going to get there. Even some sort of temporary solution, and just Israel leaving Gaza alone and dismantling its settlements in the West Bank, the occupied West Bank. Even that is not going to materialize until we see major forms of pressure on the Israeli government, especially in the US, but not just in the US. Every place matters, including South African pressure. And of course, one of the things that activists can do around the world is joining the BDS campaign, Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions, which is a democratic, non-violent alternative to the horrific violence that we're seeing here, violence that's killing Palestinians and Israelis alike.
And by the way, the BDS is pretty active in South Africa as well. We speak with them often on this radio show. Just in closing, very quickly, let's assume the war ends tomorrow or next week. Netanyahu, his popularity and his position, is there future for him? Your thoughts?
So I think he's on his way out. I mean, because the failure from an Israeli perspective, the military failure is huge on October 7th. He's extremely unpopular now. I think he's on his way out. It's likely that he will be replaced by a so-called more centrist figure, someone like Benny Gantz, perhaps. But the problem is that our so-called center is also pro-apartheid, extremely racist, supportive of the ongoing extermination right now in Gaza. So the global effort to end Israeli apartheid will not end when Netanyahu is out.
Ofer Neiman, Israeli anti-apartheid activist. Thank you indeed for your thoughts, your time, and your insights. Much appreciated.
Thank you. It
Go
was a
well.
pleasure. Thank you.
Go well, and please keep safe. And that, of course, was a very interesting discussion with an Israeli anti-apartheid activist. And as we always say over and over again on this show, that we are not anti-Jewish, we are anti-Zionist. So let me just clarify that. Standing by to talk with us is Nadia Mir from the Two Sons Shamshan organization, and lots more coming your way this morning right here on News and Views on Salam Media.
A foolish question to keep our mental state defensive and within the conflict. You see, the moment we rise above the conflict, our consciousness elevates and we begin to make out the patterns. But they want us to remain so intensively zoomed in, so all we see are pixels, just like an image. But let's zoom out for a second and see the full picture. Do you condemn? We've heard this melody before. In fact, it has echoed across centuries. 56 million Native Americans was killed, and the question was, do you condemn the wild red Indians? 250,000 perished when nuclear bombs devastated Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the question was, do you condemn Pearl Harbor? 3.6 million people has been killed in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen, and the question was, do you condemn 9/11? Over 1 million people were killed in Iraq, and the question was, do you condemn the weapon of mass destruction? The list is long, but you get the full image now. It's the same story with different villains. And here we are, once again, do you condemn Hamas? Another attempt to justify brutal killings. This is not a war between religions, because those who are behind it, they don't believe. This has always been about power and resources, and that's the bigger picture. Expecting a solution from those who created the web is like a bug asking the spider for its freedom, not realizing the purpose of the web.